First of all, I want to thank everyone who's on the channel that's new. There are a lot of new people here. Also, Deconstructing Narcissism stopped by yesterday, which now in his circles is a moderately large channel and probably one of the reasons why my channel took off like it did last year because of larger YouTubers coming here and kind of giving me a shout out. So today's video is related to a comment that someone left last night. And again, remember, if you're not subscribed, subscribe, leave a comment, drop a donation, do what you need to do on the channel. But mainly, hit the thumbs up. It helps me with the algorithm that's always trying to make certain that people don't see this content. But I think that the cat is out of the bag because 10,000 views for me in one day is a lot of views, and my little bar, my stats are climbing like crazy. I mean, last week I didn't think I was going to keep doing the channel. This week I'm making money. And so with that said, let's get into today's video, which is entitled Respectable Careers and Poverty Paychecks. They tell you to get a respectable job, like it's a magic ticket out of poverty. So you do it. You trade the fast food apron for an office badge, cubicle, and maybe even a title that sounds good at family reunions. At first, it feels like progress, but then the bills start adding up, and you realize the math hasn't changed. Rent still eats up half your paycheck, groceries bite the rest, and your benefits don't benefit you at all. It hits you. You're just in a nicer prison now with better lighting and a longer commute. I haven't heard it placed this simplistic in a long time. You go from working or living in a hard prison, right? A prison, a supermax prison, to being in the prison where they have that lady that helped Epstein. And it's more like a country club that you can't leave. But the fact is that the stress associated with low level jobs that come with respectable titles is very high. It is mind numbingly difficult to do the same thing over and over again while the corporate algorithm decides whether or not your performance is high enough. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day, is who's going to not make the cut. At Amazon, I think it's the bottom 15% of low output workers get a pink slip without ever having to talk to anyone. You just find out that you're fired because you didn't meet the performance quota that everyone else sets. So if you got a lot of people who are out there doing a ton of work, it's going to make the people at the bottom look like they're not doing any work. So at McDonald's, this is how they count it. The more fries you make, the more productivity it looks like you're accomplishing, right? The more customers you handle in the drive-thru, the more hamburgers you make, the more supersized meals that you do, the better you are at your job. But not all jobs are that easy to show that you're working, because a lot of people's work is almost invisible. There are a lot of portions of working at McDonald's of mine that are almost entirely invisible. All the little things that you do to keep the lights on that no one else notices, but you know that if you don't continue doing them, well, they're not going to get done. So without further ado, let's get into talking point number one. Moving from low status jobs into industries like healthcare, education, or business often feels like a step up, but the underlying structure doesn't change. These jobs may come with titles, business cards, and the illusion of stability, yet they operate on the same exploitative math, wages that look good on paper but are swallowed up whole by rent, transportation, and insurance and basic living costs. The dignity is in the branding, not in the reality. That's the truth of it, is that when you're working at McDonald's, you can afford to rent a room in someone else's house for a slumlord for $900. You get a $20 an hour job, and now you can rent out the master bedroom instead of just renting one of the smaller children's size bedrooms. But the truth is that with rent and wages, they're correlated together. The moment you start making a little bit more, your rent is right there to stop you from benefiting from it. And this morning when I woke up, I was reading something that the reason the economy is doing so bad is because so many people took summer vacations. I'm like, really? Are you really going to push that narrative on people that the economy is to be blamed on people not being at work during the summer? Is there really this gaslighting, this ridiculous nature of always making it seem like it's the proletariat's fault for the world falling apart around them? There's always some way of saying that it's poor people's fault, because I assure you, as a poor person myself, I haven't taken any days off this summer. I mean, I think I may have taken one extra day off around the 4th of July, but that's been it. The entire summer has passed. Summer is nearly over. And I've had one additional day off at McDonald's. Why? Because the conveyor belt of fries has to continue moving nonstop. When you work in a place like this or any other low paying job, it's not about you having fun. It's about you showing up every day consistently and getting your work done and making certain that you're ready for more work all of the time. Because that's what work is. It never stops. In keeping the wages as low as humanly possible, they make certain that they're going to get to use you until you're in your 70s or 80s, because what savings do you have? I know that if I looked in every one of my subscribers' bank account right now, there'd be a couple of fish head buckets and maybe some crumbs, but there's no ability to take time off and go somewhere. I haven't had a vacation since I started working, a real vacation. When I take days off, I just usually sit in my apartment, I sit on my hands, and I wait for work to start. That was the couple days that I took off last year for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I never go anywhere. I never do anything, and there's a simple reason for that. There's absolutely no money for general happiness or joy, because it's been sucked right out of poor people's world. If you have a day off, you better be doing something to generate an income. All right, talking point number 2. Even at $20 an hour, the promise of a self-sufficiency collapses under modern living expenses. Full-time work should in theory cover housing, food, healthcare, transportation, and some savings, but the rising cost of essentials outpaces wage growth year after year. This forces workers to either take on multiple jobs, sacrifice rest, or accumulate debt just to maintain a baseline existence, all while employers frame it as a personal budgeting issue rather than a systemic one. You guys have all heard this. At McDonald's, they provide you a pamphlet on how you should be spending your McPaycheck. They tell you exactly in brackets how much life you can afford. And these corporations don't really take into consideration real world costs. I remember the last time I looked at the pamphlet, they wanted you spending $400 a month on rent. We haven't seen $400 a month on rent in the last, maybe 20 or 30 years? But somehow they think that you're living at home as a 50-year-old man who is working the fry later. $400 is what you could give your parents to let you continue renting your childhood bedroom. It's not the cost of a mortgage or even this apartment. When a one-bedroom apartment, the average cost of it is $2,300, and McDonald's thinks that your rent is $400, there's a problem there. When McDonald's thinks that you're spending $150 on groceries per week, that's a problem. When it thinks that your car payment is $150, that is a problem. It's not that the government or policymakers are out of touch. It's simply that they don't care whether or not you can afford to support yourself on one 40-hour-a-week job. Because they've never lived off a 40-hour work week. And that's the thing that makes me really angry, is that they've never had to exist on a limited amount of money on $16 an hour. And they don't understand what it's like to stand in front of a hot stove all day making hamburgers. All they know is that when you fail financially, it's your fault. When I worked at Walmart, every time someone complained about money, they'd point at your shoes and say, "Oh, look at how fancy your sneakers are. That's why you're broke." Or, "Oh, you look so tired. Did you stay up playing video games till 3 o'clock in the morning?" No, you schedule this person for a closing shift and an opening shift. They know that destroys people. They know that not having regular days off destroys people. Not having regular days off because they don't know when they're going to need you in the following week. Because when you work in a job that doesn't care about its workers, they don't care about scheduling you opening, closing, not scheduling you on Wednesday and Thursday, but still calling to ask you because Susie Rottencrotch didn't show up to work today because she was actually out partying all night, or even worse, she was working her second or third job and she didn't come into work that day. And those are real life problems. And if you don't make yourself available, they will find someone else. I've seen it. I've experienced it throughout my entire life. They're looking for people that don't care about their own lives. They're looking for people that they can exploit to the nth degree. All right, closing monologue. Respectable careers don't save you. They just put better clothes on the same old poverty. The paycheck is still too small, the work is still too draining, and the future still too uncertain to build anything real. All you've done is learn how to smile while the water keeps rising. And in this economy, drowning politically is apparently the most professional skill you can have. Ouch. But it makes sense, people. If the water keeps rising and poverty keeps sinking you, what do you think is going to happen? Why do you think they call it being underwater on your car loan when you owe more money than your car's worth? Underwater means you're not going to make it. Most people in the current job economy are going under. They're already wearing a snorkel. They're going under so fast. And no one wants to talk about that because if you fail, it is a personal fail. You failed because you couldn't adapt. This is the comment I see every single day on my channel. It's like, well, you have to adapt. How am I going to adapt when every job wants to pay $16 an hour? And you don't really have the skill set. You're not a specialized person. Sure, I went to college, but what did college teach me? Nothing useful. I'd make a great academic person. I wrote academic papers for over 10 years. But that skill doesn't translate into any tangible skill that you really need in this world. It just doesn't work that way. And unfortunately, the universities out there, they know this. They know they're selling phony liberal arts degrees to people that don't need liberal arts degrees. Liberal arts degrees are for people who don't need money. Learning how to do something, well, that's how you ensure that you don't end up like me at Pound Town